Anti-D Law welcomes you to the 7-day course for the LSAT-India. In this course, you will receive 7 lessons each for logical reasoning, analytical reasoning, and reading comprehension. So let's begin with today's lecture. This is LR7, the 7th lesson of logical reasoning. So please pause the video and try solving this question by yourself first before listening to my explanation. Let us first remember as to what we are required to do. It's very important for you to start off with this because then you know as to what your objective is when you read the text. So you're here required to find as to the grounds on which the argument is the most vulnerable to criticism, which means you're required to see the weakness, or you're required to see a loophole in the argument, right? So now we have to see as to what the weakness in this argument is. Let's first have a look at the argument, okay? So, an occultist is somebody who deals with something that is occult. And something which is occult is basically that which is supernatural, that is not visible to the naked eye or perceived by the ordinary 5 senses, okay? So that's why you can see deals with ghosts, okay? So what you see here is that he makes a statement. So the occultist says that if there are ghosts, the ghosts are supernatural. Next he says that science only studies what is natural. And he says that therefore, if someone believes in a ghost, right, if there is a belief in ghosts, that cannot be criticized by science, right? He says that you cannot use science for this criticism because science operates in the natural sphere, whereas ghosts operate in the supernatural sphere. This is what he says. So now we have to see as to where the weakness for this lies. So basically what he says is that suppose somebody believes in ghosts, science cannot be used to criticize that belief. Now you tell me, what do you think the weakness in this is? Take a moment, pause the video if you must, and think about it. There is a weakness. We will proceed to the options after this, but try to see as to what the weakness is. It is important for you to think of the weakness yourself before you actually go ahead and look at the options. When you see the options, and if you've already thought about it, then the answer will surface more easily. Otherwise, you just stare at the options and you make no progress. So this question is one of the tougher questions that you'd find for the LSAT, and therefore I had left it for the last lesson, LR7. Also, there's a little difference in the way I'd approach this question. As you can see, ordinarily, I'd look at the options and see as to what works for me by first trying to say, leave out the worst looking options and then perhaps pick up what looks okay. But in this case, you'd see that the options themselves are quite intricate and deep. So if I were to spend time seeing each option and then trying to eliminate, it would take me a lot of time and effort, and perhaps I would not even get it right. So in such a question where the options are seemingly tough, in fact, they're not seemingly tough, they are quite difficult, it's better for us to spend some more time on the passage itself and then directly arrive at the one answer that appears right to us, okay? So what we'll do here again is we'll think a little more about the argument that is made by the occultist, and then we'll try to pick the right answer instead of eliminating the wrong answers, okay? So let's go back to what our argument is. So the argument is, and it is dealing with the criticism of the belief in ghosts. So we are talking about belief in ghosts and actually about the criticism of the belief in ghosts. So what he says about this is that since science deals with what is natural, it cannot be used to criticize the belief in ghosts because the ghosts are something that are supernatural. This is his point. Now the mistake here, since we are here to look for the criticism, it's very important again for us to remember that we are not here to completely decode and understand the argument that he makes. The objective for us is made very clear by the statement of the question. We are trying to look for a mistake that he is making in this entire argument here. So this thing that you see here, this entire argument, we are here to look for a mistake in this, okay? And that is our objective, okay? Now, let's look for the mistake that he makes. I can understand that ghosts are supernatural and that science deals with that which is natural. So science deals with that which is natural. But does that mean that the criticism for ghosts should also be supernatural? Just because of the fact that ghosts are supernatural, does that mean even the criticism for ghosts should be supernatural? Can there not be a natural phenomenon based criticism for this? You see, it's very important to understand the distinction between the two. Ghosts are supernatural, but the criticism about ghosts or criticism about the belief in ghosts could be from supernatural things or on the basis of natural evidence, right? But the occultist ignores this. So the occultist basically ignores the fact that it is possible that the criticism, right, the criticism for belief in ghosts can come from something which is natural, okay? And now if you look at the options, you realize that the most obvious answer here is the option A. It exactly mimics what we just said here. It is exactly paraphrasing and repeating what we just said here. Spend some time on this question, look at the other options. It will tell you and it will refine your ability to identify the criticism. This is a good question, spend some time on it, and congratulations if you've been able to get it right. It was a good question and I'm glad if you could do this well. Alright, so take a moment and try solving this question first by your own self, and then we'll solve it together. So we'll first have a look at this passage, and as you know, the right answer from the 5 options would be the one which is most strongly supported by this information. So let's try to make sense of this information and then we'll look at the options. Alright. So what we learn from this passage is that the body responds to physical stress of moderate nature by improving its physical condition. Okay, so it says that that if the body has physical stress of moderate exercise, then this leads to an improvement in the physical condition. Okay. But it goes on to say that one cannot increase the severity of the exercise indefinitely and still improves one's fitness. This is because under excessive stress, the body puts most of its energy into preventing organ damage. So it says that although you can increase your and improve your physical condition through exercise, if you were to go too far, then this would put excessive stress, and then the body puts its energy into preventing organ damage. So he says that the ideal exercise is one that is slightly more stressful than one's body can handle comfortably. Of course, the ideal intensity varies from person to person. So what he says is, so let us say if this is the body, so what you know is that a little bit of exercise or a certain amount of exercise will increase the physical fitness. However, beyond a certain point, it will start to cause problems. Therefore, it varies from person to person, and you have to stay within the limit that is only slightly more stressful than what can be handled comfortably. So you take only slightly more than one can handle comfortably. Now that we've understood this, let's go and have a look at the options. So what we had seen was that the body responds positively in response to exercise However, if the exercise becomes too much, then it gives you a negative response, and therefore you need to do only the amount of exercise which is slightly more stressful than what is comfortable, right? This is what we've seen. Now let us see as to which of these is which of the options is supported by this. If you look at option A, it says that any physical stress will improve fitness as long as the body does not have to put its energy into preventing organ damage. Now this doesn't look like a very bad option, but let me tell you as to why it is not correct. Okay, remember, it is not any physical stress. Here it talks of any physical stress, but what you will see in the passage is that it talks of the physical stress of moderate exercise. Let me give you an example of another physical stress which is not moderate exercise. Let us say you take a pin and you poke it to yourself, or you take a clip and you poke yourself. That is a kind of physical stress, right? But it is not exercise. So therefore it is not any physical stress, but only the moderate exercise that could help. So therefore what I will do is that I can eliminate option A. Next, let's look at option B. It says that younger athletes can exercise harder before their bodies begin to put any energy into preventing Here it has been presumed that younger athletes can do better. You see, this might be true, but you are not here to draw inferences that are not given in the passage. You are required to confine yourself to what is given in the passage. No mention of younger athletes, of youthfulness, of old age have been made in the passage, and therefore I am tempted to eliminate this option as well. Now let's look at option C. It says that human bodies vary in the amount of stress they can handle comfortably. So this looks good, because as you can see even here, it says that the ideal exercise that is for one's body, right? Which means that everybody's body is different. So human bodies vary in the amount of physical stress they can handle comfortably. This looks good. It's a possible right answer. Let's look at the next option, option D. Here what you see is that the human body cannot improve its physical condition except through moderate exercise. You see, moderate exercise improves the body. Okay, this does not mean that only moderate exercise improves the body. Perhaps meditation improves the body as well. It's not been spoken of. So understand that the relationship is in this way. The relationship has not been given in the reverse. You do not have a relationship in the reverse, that the body is only improved through moderate exercise. Perhaps eating good food could improve the condition of the body. So you cannot say that moderate exercise is the only way. It's wrong to say that, and therefore I will have to eliminate option D as well. Finally, let's look at option E. Option E says that some organ damage results from any exercise that is more stressful than. You see, it is saying here that organ damage happens. This is again a wrong thing to say. I'll tell you why. In the passage, it says that the body puts its energy into preventing organ damage, which means that organ damage may or may not happen. Maybe it is prevented. So you cannot say that organ damage will surely happen. You can't say that some organ damage results. It may or may not result. The passage only talks about preventing organ damage. Therefore, let's not get confused, and it's quite clear that the answer to this question is the option C. Let's proceed to the third and the last question for this session. Alright, so pause the video for a moment and try solving the question by your own self, and then we will do this together. So as you can see, this is a question on logically completing the philosopher's argument. So let's look at what the argument is before that, and then we need to ensure that the last step also is taken in the same direction. We must not digress, we must not go in a different direction. The last step where we complete it should be in the same direction. So let us try to identify as to what has been said above. It says, the philosopher says that that nations are not literally persons. So he says that nations are not literally persons. They have no thoughts or feelings, and literally they perform no actions. He says thus they have no rights or responsibilities. But he goes on to say that but no nation can survive unless many of its citizens attribute such rights and responsibilities to it. For nothing else could prompt people to make the sacrifices national citizenship demands. So what he says is this, that nations are not persons, and if they are not persons, then they do not have feelings or thoughts, they do not perform any actions. But he makes another point. He says that a nation can survive only if the citizens, only if many of its citizens believe that the nation has these feelings. Let's say, for example, let us say there's a soldier. I'm just giving you an example here. A soldier perhaps thinks of land as his motherland, which means that he gives it a certain kind of feeling, he gives it a certain kind of right. So what you're saying is that the nation survives because many citizens believe and attribute such feelings and rights to the nation. Okay, so now we'll see as to which of the options completes it. So I hope you've got it. The point basically being made here is that although the nation is not a person with feelings, the survival of the nation depends on people believing, the citizens believing that it actually is a person. Alright, so let's now look at the options. Alright, so we know that we have to complete the philosopher's argument, and in order to complete the argument we have to first see as to what the direction of this argument is, and then we take the next step in that direction. Okay, so what is the direction of the argument here? The argument is that a nation is not a person and therefore it does not have feelings. This is what he says. But he goes on to say next that in order for a nation to survive, many of its citizens must believe that yes, it actually has feelings. So he says that a nation actually does not have feelings, but for its survival, people must believe that actually yes, it has feelings. Now let's look at what can work next. I'll start with the options that look the most absurd, and then we'll arrive at our right answer through the process of elimination. Let's look at option D to start off with. Let's look at option D. Okay. Option D says that then a nation is not worth the sacrifices that its citizens make on its behalf. You see, the sacrifices and the worth does not necessarily depend on whether the nation has feelings or not. Maybe a nation is worth it even if it does not have feelings. This is not something that has been discussed by the philosopher, and therefore we need not go as far as to make that conclusion. So I can eliminate the option D. Next, let's look at option C. Maybe option C looks like something that is okay. It does not look bad. But the question that we need to ask is, does this follow as a logical completion of this argument? Does this follow as the next step? Here we are talking about whether a nation has feelings or not. He says that it does not have feelings. But for its survival, people must believe. So, a nation can never be a target of moral praise or blame. This is not the next step in the completion of an argument. I hope you're able to appreciate that, and therefore we will eliminate option C as well. Next, let's look at option A. It says that a nation cannot continue to exist unless something other than the false belief that a nation has moral rights motivates its citizens to make sacrifices. You see, there is no need for something other than the belief that it has moral rights. The belief that it has moral rights is enough. So talking about something other than this is extraneous. This is data that is not spoken of by the philosopher. This is external data, it is irrelevant, and therefore I can eliminate option A as well. Now let's look at option B and see if it makes sense to us. Option B says that a nation cannot survive unless many of its citizens have some beliefs that are literally false. So as you can see here, the belief that the nation has feelings is obviously false, right? But it is required for the survival of the nation, right? So a nation cannot survive unless many of its citizens have beliefs that are literally false, and therefore option B is the right answer.